Okay, let's go over the common concerns that people have, because at the point of this course, you might be going, yes, this sounds amazing, but I've got some concerns. I've got some questions. Let's go over all of them. The number one concern that Muslims have is, isn't investing just like gambling? And I know we touched previously in the beginning of this course, but I want to go over it briefly before we get to the other concerns people have. The concern with it representing gambling is that if you invest into an asset and there is some uncertainty, like a stock might go down, then all of a sudden it resembles gambling. But that's simply not the case. And Islam very clearly tells us the difference with gambling and legitimate business risk, right? So legitimate business risk is buying something based on your knowledge and skill, right? It might go down, but that doesn't mean you gambled on it. You made an intelligent decision with high probability of succeeding. Versus when you're doing gambling, it's purely based on chance, right? It's the difference of, okay, this is why I think the stock is going to go up XYZ. This is the stuff that proves why I think that. That's real legitimate business risk, and that's completely fine. That's permissible. And then gambling is, I've got no idea what this stock is. I've never heard of it. I'm going to put $10,000 in it and see if it goes up or down. That's the difference between investing and gambling. So if we look at like historical context, right? If we go back 1400 years ago during Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's time, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he engaged in trading. All of the Sahaba did. There was uncertainty, right? People could literally seize their caravans. Does that mean that they were gambling on the trading they were doing? No. That is the risk of being involved in business. And then if we look at the modern application, buying stocks that are on well-researched companies that have been around for a very long time and you're holding them as a long-term asset, that is a business investment. Now, day trading based on like short-term price movements and like hoping to make quick cash, buying and selling, that is closer to gambling, okay? But there is nothing about long-term Sharia-compliant investing that resembles gambling. You're completely fine, okay? Now, concern number two is, Kenyon, this sounds awesome, but I don't want to lose my money. And that's completely fair, right? The concern is that the returns of investing, they're not guaranteed. And we've all seen the stock market go down. We've all seen Bitcoin crash. So what happens if I lose my savings? Now, the thing is, your concern is completely fair. With investing, there's always going to be risk. But I want to highlight something really important, the historical perspective. If you're like, Kenyon, I'm worried about making money. Okay, well, any funds that I recommend you buy, if you look at the 20-year time horizon of those funds, they've never lost money. Okay, so this is not me saying it's a safe investment. If you look at the S&P 500, which is the main, obviously that's haram for us, but we're using this for an example. The S&P 500 Sharia Index Fund is the exact same thing. If you look at it over a 20-year time horizon, it never loses money, right? But you know, if you kept all of that money in the bank, like we've talked about in the course where we talked about why you shouldn't have a savings account, you would have lost a bunch of money because of inflation. So it's pretty guaranteed you cannot lose your money with investing. Now, yes, you can if you're irresponsible and you invest emotionally, but if you follow your system, you're not going to lose your money. So here are some risk management strategies that you can follow, okay? Diversification. Make sure you don't have all of your money in one asset. Make sure you're spread across many different assets, so when one asset goes down, you're still protected because you have your money in other assets, okay? Time horizon. Make sure when you invest your money, you can hold it for at least 5 years. Because yes, you might buy right now, and then we might have a stock market crash. And then you're like, Canyon, screw you. You just told me to buy. Yes, it might go down right now, but over a long enough time horizon, it will always go up. And that is why the long-term investor always wins. Education, number 3. It's what you're doing right now. May Allah bless you for your efforts. Ameen. Make sure you know what you're doing before you start doing it, okay? If you don't understand an asset, don't buy it. So for example, you know that I do buy Bitcoin and I'm bullish on Bitcoin. But if you're listening to this right now and you know nothing about Bitcoin, you shouldn't go buy a bunch of Bitcoin. You should first understand it and you should learn. And then number 4 is gradual entry, just like dollar cost averaging, right? You should start small. If you have $10,000 to your name, I don't recommend you actually full port and invest $10,000 in the stock market immediately. Start slow. Start investing $100 a month. Build the habit. Stay consistent. Now, the third concern that people have when it comes to investing is, don't scholars disagree on this? But Canyon, I heard some sheikh in Malaysia say if I start investing, it resembles gambling. Okay, I get it. The concern is that if there's different scholarly opinions, I should just avoid it entirely. But the reality is, If you look at the general consensus of every single scholar and every single Sharia board and every single Islamic financial institution, they all agree on the core principles. Okay, 95% agree on the exact same principles. They might be a couple outliers, but they are a very small minority. Okay, most all people agree on everything I've lined out in this course. I wouldn't recommend it if they didn't. Okay, they agree that you can own halal stocks. They agree that interest-based returns are wrong. They agree that we have to stay away from the prohibited industries. All of those things. Everything I've mentioned, the majority of people agree with. Okay, so just because one sheikh from some country says it's wrong doesn't mean it is. Always, when seeking knowledge, try to cross-reference across as many different fatwas, as many different references as possible, and find what is the majority. I think it's always best to follow the majority. Now, yes, there are some areas of disagreement, but they're in areas that won't stop you from investing. There's no disagreements on any of the major things to allow you to start investing. There's disagreements on like the exact threshold of the financial ratios that I ran you through. Some people say it's 30%. Some people say it's 40%. Some people say it's 33%, right? Minute details. There is a difference of agreement on the defense industry, right? If it's permissible to buy stocks that are in the defense industry. And then there's some disagreements on how to purify your wealth if you do earn income from prohibited industries. But right, this is very minute stuff. So don't let one fatwa from one scholar be the reason you don't start investing. If you look at the Quran, you look at the Hadiths, you look at every single major scholarly fatwa, there's nothing that says it's wrong to invest as a Muslim. The next concern that people have when investing is, what if the market crashes, right? What if I put everything in and I lose everything? The reality is market crashes are always temporary, okay? And like I said earlier, over a long enough time horizon, you will always make money. If you look at any of the financial crises we've had where stock markets plummeted, everything was going horrible, the only people who lost money were those who sold. If you sell when you're down, yes, you're going to lose money. But if you never sell during a market crash, the market will go back up and then you'll make money and then you're completely fine. Now, some people say, well, what if we have the worst crash in history, Canyon? Here's the reality. If we have the worst crash in history and the stock market never comes up, that means we've gone into the biggest economic crisis the world has ever seen and the world would be falling apart. You're not going to be worried about the money you have invested. Okay, so here are some historical facts to back up what I'm saying. The stock market has crashed many, many times throughout history, and we are still standing, and it has reached all-time highs. And usually after a crash, it does reach an all-time high. So if you want to find the right time to buy when the stock market crashes. Long-term investors who stayed invested no matter what have always been rewarded. People who do not panic sell always win in the long run. And panic selling, when the market goes down, is how you lock in your losses, right? If your portfolio is down 20%, that doesn't mean you've lost 20%. Only the value is down. But if you sell, that does mean you've then lost 20%, okay? So here's a practical strategy to avoid being in a bad financial situation if there is a stock market crash, okay? Invest money you won't need for many years. If you're investing money that you're like, I need to be able to take this out and be liquid immediately, don't invest that money. That's not a smart financial situation to be in. Always make sure you have a safety net. You've got a nest egg of cash in your bank. And then what you can afford to lose or what you can afford to set aside for years, that's what you should invest. Obviously, diversify across a bunch of different investments because crashes don't always happen as in every asset, right? So crashes aren't usually every asset crashes. We have a real estate crash. We have a stock market crash. So if all your money is in one asset, then when that crashes, you go down completely. But if you're completely diversified, when one asset crashes, the rest of yours are completely fine. Always dollar cost average. Okay, dollar cost averaging means buying every single month regardless of the price. So when the stock market's crashing, that means you're buying at lower prices, which means you're getting your assets on a discount. So when they go up, you make more money. Okay, and then you're going to hear me say this over and over and over, but it's so important. Focus on long-term goals. Okay, if you want to make money as an investor, have a long-term time horizon. Okay, next concern. This is a big one, and this is applicable for Muslims because the unfortunate reality is the majority of Muslims come from impoverished countries, and this is part of my mission. I want to help that. I want to help bring more wealth to those countries. Muslims will say, I don't have enough money to start. Canyon, I only make $300 a month. I only make $500 a month. And I get that. And the concern is I need a bunch of money to start investing, right? Canyon, you're saying I have to invest $285 every single month to be a millionaire in 40 years. Yes, I get that. But the reality is you can start building wealth with very small amounts. And on top of that, it's not even just about building the wealth. You need to build the financial discipline. You need to learn the financial habits to being a good investor. So that starts with even $1 a month, okay? And the most platforms online allow you to invest $1 a month. There's fractional shares. People will say, I want to own some Bitcoin, but I don't have $120,000. I can't buy Bitcoin. No, you can buy 0.0000001% of a Bitcoin. Okay, and then you can set up automatic amounts. Just, like if you use Wahad or any major app, you can set up automatic amounts where it just takes $10 out of your paycheck every single month. It takes $10 out of your bank every single month. Okay. Now, I thought this was neat. I added an Islamic principle here. The Prophet said, no one eats better food than that which he eats out of the work of his hand, right? It shows us nothing is better than what we've worked for, right? So how do you get blessings? How do you get barakah behind what you do? The things you've worked for, right? You grind it at your job. Doesn't matter. Don't be ashamed if you only make $500 a month. Don't be ashamed of that. Be proud of the work you've done. You'll have the blessings from Allah and still invest no matter what, okay? Here's a practical example. Say you can invest $25 a month. That's $1 a day, okay? Over 30 years at an 8% return, you'd have approximately $75,000. Now, some people might say that's not that much. Yes, but if you did nothing, that 30 years will still go by, right? The time is going to happen no matter what. Some people wait for the perfect time to start investing, or they wait for the perfect situation to line up, but that time is going to go by no matter what. You might as well start, okay? And then what's great is after years of doing this, you will have built the financial discipline. And, if you want to succeed as an investor, you need discipline. You need to not listen to your emotions. So now when you do start to make more money, you'll actually know how to manage it properly, and you'll be in a better situation, okay? So key insight here is starting with a small amount is infinitely better than not starting, okay? Like I said, you need the habits, you need the knowledge, you need it to compound. Please start. Don't let not having enough money be the reason you don't do it, okay? Literally, even if you can only invest $1 a month, do it. I promise you, it's going to help you out. And if you start investing every single month, you'll pay attention to investing, and then that will lead you to make more money, okay? Here's a good concern. The next concern that people have is, what if I invest into a halal company and then it becomes haram later? Okay, so the concern is you buy something and then you're not paying attention, and then all of a sudden you've been invested into a haram company. Okay, the reality is this is very easy to avoid with proper monitoring. And if you do something like Wahad, insert advert, set up an account with Wahad, use code Canyon for $10 of free stock. Boom. Seriously though. So if you use there's other ones like Wahad too, but if you use a service like Wahad, they auto screen it for you. So if you're investing and you're invested in something that then turns haram, they'll automatically take that out of your portfolio. So you're completely fine. Okay. And there's a bunch of monitoring systems out there. There's a bunch of apps that scan things for you. You can find them online. There's a bunch of free services, and there's a bunch of paid ones as well. Now, if you're not going to go through a service like Wahad, then yes, you are going to be having to manually pay attention to these things. So say you're screening your stocks, and then you do realize one becomes haram, or you get like a notification from your app, it becomes haram. What do you need to do? You need to sell it, okay? And then donate any profits that you earned from it during the non-compliant period. Okay, that's the important part. And then obviously reinvest into a different company that is permissible. But the donating the profits that came from the non-compliant part is very crucial. Some Muslims think if they invest in a company and then it turns haram, and say they made $1,000, then they have to donate that $1,000. No, you only have to donate the profits that were made after the company became impermissible. Because when you invested in it previously, it was permissible. Now, historical context, most companies that are halal have stayed halal forever. It's very, very rare that you actually see a company is halal and then it turns into haram. Okay, next concern. Is Sukuk different than bonds? Now, this was a concern that I had, okay? So we haven't talked about Sukuk really in detail, I don't think. But Sukuk is a Islamic version of traditional bonds, right? So bonds, you lend a government money and then they give you a fixed return. It's interest. Now, when I was first looking into Sharia-compliant investing, I saw the idea of bonds and I was like, did the Muslims kind of just slap the halal label on there and it's still actually interest, just kind of worked around? Like, I do believe there are some Islamic mortgages that aren't. They're not. It's a fee, it's not interest. It's still interest, right? So I was curious, is that the same thing for Sukuk? And it's a completely valid concern. Now, the reality is Sukuk and traditional bonds, they are fundamentally structured completely different. Okay, so conventional bonds, I lend my money to a company or to the government, and they guarantee how much they're going to give me. I don't own any asset. I just gave them money, and the return is based on debt. Okay, there's no owning assets, and the return is fixed. Sukuk is I buy ownership in a tangible asset, and the returns come from the profits generated from that asset. So just like stocks, I own something legitimately, and the money I make from investing is based on legitimate economic value. I own a real piece of whatever it is, okay? And obviously the return is based on the asset performance. So here's an example. Bond. I give a government $1,000. They promise to pay me $1,050. That's a bond, 5% return. Sukuk, I buy 100% ownership in a share and toll road, right? Like a pay to drive on road. And then I'll receive my gains, the income from my investments, based on a share of the toll revenue. Okay. So when a government needs to raise money or a company needs to raise money, they will issue bonds. They'll say, hey, public, give us money. We'll promise to give you X return, right? It's not based on anything. They're just saying, give me money. Now, when you do this in the Islamic sense, you're saying, hey, I need money, but I'll actually give you a piece of this. I'll allow you to have ownership of what's going on here. That is the very big difference. Sukuk, you are a holder of a real asset. With bonds, you're a holder to a debt claim. Okay, very different. Now, this last one is something I was hesitant to put in the beginner course because it can be confusing, but this is very important. How do you pay zakat on investments? If I catch any of you taking my advice and then not paying your zakat, I will find you. On Judgment Day, I'll be finding you. Okay, probably not because I'll be fearing Allah and focusing on my own life, but please pay your zakat, okay? The concern is, how do I calculate my zakat on my investments? What do I do? Now, here's the reality. There are many different scholarly opinions on this. One of them is way more common than all of them, but I'll give you the ones you can follow, okay? There's three options. Option number one is very much the most common one and highly recommended by the majority of scholars, okay? You pay 2.5% on the current market value of all your investments annually. So like when you pay zakat on your cash, so if you have $100,000 invested, you pay 2.5 grand, right? At the end of the year, I've got $100,000, I pay 2.5 grand. This is the most common approach. Now, option two, which some scholars do also say, is you pay zakat only on the profits when you sell the investments. Okay, so say you have $100,000 invested, it's now valued at $110,000, you sell, you now have to pay zakat on that $10,000 that you made. Okay, so you don't pay zakat on the unrealized gains. You don't pay zakat on the money sitting in your investment account. Option three is a mixed approach where you pay zakat on the income generated every single year from your investment. So if you have dividends, so say you have $100,000 invested and it pays you $8,000 a year, you have to pay zakat on that $8,000. And then you also pay zakat when you sell. Okay, it's confusing. What should you do? Which one should you follow? This is very, very important. I don't know why that popped up. Choose one, okay, and stick with it consistently. Don't switch between different opinions based on convenience. An issue that we have right now in finance and in other topics that the Quran and Sunnah doesn't tell us in detail is people like to fatwa chase. They like to find the fatwa that is best for them and makes their life easier. Don't do that. Go with usually what the majority is, or pick your thing and stick with it. Don't pick what's convenient to you. That's not following Islam. That's trying to feel like you're still following Islam, but not really, okay? The recommended approach is option 1 or 2. 3 is very uncommon, but option 1 or 2 is the most important. Now, key point, pick an approach, stay consistent, and don't let worrying about zakat be the reason it prevents you from building wealth. If you want to stay super simple, what do? Number 1, pay 2.5% every single year on the market value. That is the most common concerns that people have. I hope that was helpful. May Allah bless you. I'll see you in the next video.